Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight for the Wild and Precious Life series. I am excited to introduce all the readers that we have tonight because it is our final reading of the calendar year. So we're ending it with 4 readers instead of 3, but never fear, we're already booked through next year. So there will be another reading in January. Our first reader tonight is Donna Spruijt-Metz. Very excited to have you here, Donna. For your introduction, I actually would like to read a poem of yours that I enjoy. And it has an epigraph. The epigraph is after Psalm 78, lines 26 through 29. And the poem is, first we become flesh. So fragile, so edible, and the wings we covet like sand or ashes, spread across the darkened seas. What enters us? What is bounty? What is threat? The answer is wrapped in time, our construct, how we live or die by it, crave imagined order of it, even though we've forgotten what it entails to be seasonal, to wait for harvest, to be thankful. In the season of famine, to be grateful, even when we are full. Thank you for being here tonight, Donna. The screen is yours.
Wow, thank you so much. And thank you so much for having me. Thank you, Dustin, and the Wild and Precious Life series. And Dustin, that was amazing. Would you just like to do the reading for me? That was great. I'm going to read from my new book, which drops officially January 1st. But thank you. It can be pre-ordered, and I have heard that they come to you now. So this is my first full length, and this is my first full reading from my first full length. So here we go. Thank you again, Dustin, for having me. I'm going to start by being very glad that I closed the door, because you can still hear the dogs, I bet. They'll calm down in a minute. I'm going to start with a poem called God in Amsterdam. And you need to know a couple things about it. But I'm first going to start by setting my clock. Here we go. What you need to know in all of my poetry, just about, or all of the poetry in this book, is when I say you, I'm talking to what you might consider what's holy, the goddess, God, however you conceive of that. Specific to this poem, it starts with the Esnoga, which is a Jewish synagogue in the heart of Amsterdam that's 400 years old and somehow survived all the wars. And it's beautiful. And then finally, I discuss Jenever. Does anybody know what Jenever is? Jenever is a very fine Dutch gin, and it's my favorite drink. Okay. God in Amsterdam. The Esnoga, sea times horses slipping down your holy walls. The 400-year-old bricks and glass, Shabbat's opaque light filling the women's balcony. No service now, just this milky glow, the Torah quiet in its closed ark. Hello, God, I say, come on out. I know you're here somewhere. After all, this is your house. The least you can do is offer me a drink. Have a drink, you say. You sit down in the deafening rustle of your knot robes, pour good Jenever into fine small glasses. And there we are, going at it, shot to shot. Finally, someone I can't drink under the table. You pour another. We are jolly. You answer all my questions about death. Okay, about my own death. About your laws, I mean, are they really yours, or did we just make them up? And peace, why is it so hard? And kindness and the dew on the morning grasses, you keep up a steady stream of Jenever, making sure I'm too drunk to remember your answers. Can you hear me good? All right. I'm going to read a dead father poem. There's many dead fathers in this book, all of them mine. This is also after Psalm 38. Dead Fathers Club. I have poor depth perception. I can't thread a needle, can't get it through. You crossed over long ago. I raise my arms to block the next blow, and it will come. I predict it with this ruined machinery. The punishment for remembering is another truth. I am the patchwork woman, my heart a low-grade inflammation, my skin a dated map, modeled record of breakage. No guide for this dark walk towards God or blindness. I eat my own hands so as not to touch another's. For this one, I'm going to share my screen. This is an ekphrastic poem written to a family photo. I did a bunch of these in the book because there were just things I couldn't quite seem to write about that needed to come out. And when faced with these pictures, it was a good invitation to write the hard things. This one is called To the Death. My husband and I had a fight today about pictures. I never like the ones of me, and that pisses him off. In any picture taken right now or a few years ago or last year, I always think I look old or tired. But tonight, I am poring over decades of snapshots, and I see that there are pictures I like now at this remove. The pictures I like are the ones where I am not just looking happy, but truly happy, at least as far as memory serves. And yet I come back to this one, my mother and I. No idea when it was taken, before I moved to Holland, I'm guessing, so maybe I was 19. Who took the picture? We both seem surprised. I look like I might strangle her. Just move that hand up a tiny bit. No, this is not a happy family picture. Read the resentment in my face, the defensiveness in hers. Yet we cling to one another. We dare the onlooker to come between us as we battle each other. Okay, I'm going to read a couple of Psalms, not right next to one another, but in close proximity, that were all built on Psalm 78, which is a really long psalm, and so many different poems came out of it. I have this process called Lectio Divina, which a bunch of us Jewish ladies lifted from the monastic Christians. And it's a way of studying and rethinking any text that you want, but holy text in particular. So that's where these come from. And then I take them home from study group and make a mess of them. So this one is Messengers of Chaos. I've been thinking a lot lately about blood, how sore the overused places of my body, my gut full of blood, too wounded to drink. Remember how small she was, how I thought she would break me open, and she did. Afterwards, there were green legs beating across the hidden path, my gut full of blood then too, and my labor my own. Not now, no. Now it is taken. I am taken. One option is trust in the destruction, in the mystery of next. What is it that is being asked of us, and who asks us? Who offers weapons? The sky opens just like I did. In the new silence, the disconnect of light. My eyes are so unused to this, to these shards. What am I looking for but messengers of chaos? Busted cups of anger, more shards but different and drenched in poison. I walk towards a leveled path, and the path is not given easily. I do not give over easily, or meadows of clovers, dandelions, nettles, on rare occasion, cowslips. Here, my firstborn arrogance, my firstborn hate. Drown them, I dare you. A lot of these poems that start with the Psalms end out really, and I'm not sure it's obvious in that poem, but all of them are sort of mourning the climate and what's going on this earth. Oh yeah, I planned this out. Got a plan. So I'm now going to read the first poem in the book. Carl Phillips, I think, said the first poem in the book is really telling. And this one's sort of the whole background of my family in a very short poem. My grandmother crossed the steppes in Russia to escape the pogroms, and that kind of trauma never leaves the family somehow. So even though she never talked about it, and I know very little about it. I need the long march. When I was my grandmother's mother, I knew she would be beautiful in the time of war. So I set to knitting her a whole skein of swans in flawless V formation, pearl-colored to match her skin, steadfast guides for the long march. I sewed coins and jewelry into the hem of her dress, copals, charms, carnelian, and ash into her long sleeves. And when my fear for her life was bigger than my love, I released her to the steppes and flew above it all, above the war, grasslands, snowfields, past the small horses and the gray wolves. Thinking about all my friends who have family in Ukraine. Yeah. Oh, here's another cheery poem. What was I thinking? But this is the order I picked, and I'm not going to deviate. This is a poem called Women at Shiva. And Shiva in the Jewish faith are 7 days of mourning that start after the burial of the dead. And people come to your home and bring food, round food, this round for the symbol of life and death. And we all tell stories about the person who's passed, and that's called sitting Shiva. And this is called Women at Shiva. When a mother dies, she leaves her residue, a snail's trail across the days of her daughters. The trails form glittering webs, crisscrossing sidewalks everywhere, cracking them. We remember the mothers just as we forget the trails, ignore them, skirt them. We get on with it until the next mother dies. And then we, the daughters of the dead, are called back into the muck of it. The pull of loss, the vertigo shift in generations, the startle of aloneness, the want. Until it was our turn to leave the same glistening scar. Here's another one of those Psalm 78 poems. That was a wild psalm. And this one is even more about what's happening to our earth and how hard it is to reverse it and to change our habits, and what it does to a person, especially in a pandemic when we can't really touch one another. The Doppler effect. What does it mean to turn? Turn towards, turn away, turn tail, turn the wood on a lathe, make it beautiful, turn as a stone or a shell in the darkened seas until smooth. Return, turn back to what you thought you left behind. Come back smoother now, chastised by your own salt, a bit braver. But this is what I mean about time, the false sweep of it, the imagined flow, what I remember, what I forget. The small kindnesses when you come close, how even that can't push it down for long. Turn the pain over and over until, like a pearl, it grows luminescent and regular. And then this too is what I mean about time, how it stops here, how we cast a circle and you split me open and something passes through, or I pass through something. As the siren passes through the night, everyone's emergency, eager to stop time, to turn back for a moment without turning to salt, thirsty for water from the rock. What I want is to feel the world without pulling back, to be able to stretch out my hand. And how am I doing? Oh, perfect. This is my last poem. And this poem is called American Psalm, after American Sonnet, because I borrowed some lines from Wanda Coleman's Sonnet 35. And when I get to those lines, I'll do a little quotation mark. I would do it with both, but I'm holding a book. And you'll see how this poem sort of leads back to poem 1. So hopefully it's a neat package. American Psalm. It's Friday, our date night. I will show up no matter how busy you are. I will retreat into my white couch, pull my small world in around me, warm blanket, good friends. I will do my best to be frank, and sometimes I will sense your presence. Okay, admittedly, your presence and my ability to sense you, it's a Venn diagram. Your oil is always slick, your motor always running, my mirror always stained, and us always face to face. Oh, slide and shimmy and danger. It's a trust exercise. Turn around, fall backwards into the flurry of wings, into the mosh pit of trust. The task before me is not to rebel against your protection. I tell myself, don't stumble, don't look down, even though the pebbles along the path are colorful and smooth and tempting. I tell myself, my task is to look you in your true face with my true face and tell you everything I cannot tell myself. I will aspire to be merciless, and most Friday nights I will fail. I will blink, look away, flinch. You will give me a whole week to repair myself. Time being one of your strangest gifts and fiercest punishments. This will go on for years. Your presence flickering in and out of me, a wayward filament. But for now, let's have a drink. I'll pour. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Donna. And I'll drop it one more time. Donna's debut full length. There's the link. If you're able, make a purchase today. If not, save the link and make a purchase when you can. So next up, I'm going to ask to unmute our next reader, Theresa Senato Edwards. And Theresa, I'm going to introduce you. There was an interview that you did back in 2020 with Counterclock. And it was actually the last question you addressed why you make art. And I liked what you had to say, so I'm going to share that as your introduction. I make art by writing poetry because as difficult as it can sometimes be for me to do, I just can't seem to feel safe in my own mind or body without poetry's process and its results. I also make art by reading, commenting on, and choosing poetry for publication. When I can't write, I'm thankful that I'm able in some small way to help others write and get their work out there. Thank you for being here tonight. The screen is yours.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay. Thank you, Dustin, for having me. I really, really appreciate it. And, you know, for being a part of Wild and Precious series. I'm going to read from, let's see, let's put this light out for a minute so you can kind of see. The cover, it's full-length book. It's actually my third full length. It's called Becoming Couldn't Sing for Anyone, Harbor Editions. And I'm just going to say a little bit about it. It's very quickly: using an omniscient narrator and a second person pronoun protagonist. Becoming Couldn't Sing for Anyone is a novel in verse about the youngest of three sisters who searches through family, memory, and life to find wings, both literal and metaphorical. And so I'm going to read a few poems from this. Some of the poems have running titles. So I'll just say running title, and then I'll just go right into the poem. So the first one is a running title. You mother the sad thought of what was. Draw circles counterclockwise. Worry the body is weight, dessert, just ice. And the dead shouldn't circle its breaking. But you were born with superstitions in the gift shop of personality change. Not your mistake. And your body will never be still in the memory of your parents' home. Father building basement walls teaches you, his last daughter, to paint thin layers with each coat. Ration the paint as if your life depended on each stroke of color saved. To position a nail like a flagpole, steady, straight. Fear of missing the small silver target, unable to, not wanting to, build away an attic crawl space. A safe gap for a little girl before sorrow metastasized. So it's not a happy book. This is called glove making. Trace time, skin, hand pattern, thumb for loneliness like yesterday's wind. Table wings cut carefully, lie listless, wait for life. Gussets, the in-betweens made of cold blue upholstery. Your thumb, index finger stretched to push with tin. Mother's tiny element. Black thread, rain outside pushes you to pins. Blue upholstery cut for one promise. Cover mother's dead knuckles. Unmatched buttons beneath round rusted seal. One for each strand of DNA. Stitched slowly. This one's a prose poem, and it's called Dry Fur on a Dead Bird is Why You Felt Alone in This Space. Each day you chose sunrise because you wanted to remember orange as wonderful. But there's red in orange, the red in a teen son's 29-year-old girlfriend's convertible she bought to carry his metal smile away. Then he was someone else's son at 17. You hardly remember your surrender to motherhood. Nothing but the long scour of green in a dying garden, torn apart, desperate for lavender walls. You baked breads for a while in the flatness of an angry face. Orange flowers circled, pupils stretched, a pumpkin that's neither clock nor carriage, but there's an eye in the middle. A pinwheel about to fall backwards still lands like time, even though a flower may open and close and open and close. You searched. Yellow oil, crushed powder in a 1-inch joint. Pipe it up. No fear amid all fear. First time you feel flight. Learn how to lean around turns. Choose the position of your arms around a man's body. Roll hips around fear. Passenger on a speeding dirt bike. Mounting sand. 75-degree angled hill. Force. Bending. To forget. Never thinking the propensity of this getting. This moving could be passed to your children, quote, the neural circuitry of the ones with drug-using parents, end quote. Opiated hashish made you feel smooth, cheekbone on a porcelain china doll. Your 2 sons. It's not the edges of wings, hollow, strong, curved like thin hands separated from prayer, as if birds, bats, knew the calculations of flight. It's when organized cells follow through to next generations, the ruckus in brain cells, the looking for rewards, habits too difficult to dispel, carrying down and down like sorrow. And this has a running title. Once a mother, you tried straightening because love wasn't hypothesis straining too hard to become, but you still searched for mutation, that anomaly, as you tried to decipher texts explaining DNA. You imagined repeatedly, quote, the scallop gene, responsible for making a protein that seeks out and turns on all the genes that do the heavy lifting of producing and organizing cells to form a wing. When you dreamt you were the white heron in winter amid the river's fierce shriek, like your mother, feeling wings work their way out of your body without drugs, like childhood. And this is the last one I'm going to read. And it also has a running title. And it's the same title as the first one I read. You mother the sad thought of what became. Wrap its body in a light green blanket. Glass oven, its bed. Watch her wedge towels between her door and floor, your windows and ledge. Your mother in the haze of a 1950s childbirth, waiting room fathers, pink ribbon cigars passed around like pamphlets. Thought quelled your voice, body fisted. Cartoon stars circled your head. Becoming couldn't sing for anyone. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I'm going to drop that link back in there just in case anybody needs to save it for Becoming Couldn't Sing for Anyone. Always love when people from Harbor Editions are here because we're pressmates and I love what Harbor Editions does. And so thanks for being here tonight, Theresa. Our next poet is Yesenia Montilla. And Yesenia, for your introduction, I'm taking you back to 2018. And I got a little bit to read because I just couldn't narrow this down. So I'm sharing everything. So that's the beauty of getting to run your own series. You can do whatever the hell you want to do. So you were asked, how did you get your writing, performing started? And this was in Jasmine Mendez's blog. I always knew I would be a writer. That's been my dream since I was a little girl. I would spend countless hours writing stories. My grandmother has a box of them in her apartment in Miami. So for me, I always wanted to write. As children, we know what we want. Our form of play is our form of real life. We play at being teacher and policeman and dancer and detective. And if we're left to our own devices, we become that or a form of that. We grow up to want to teach others, to help others, or save others, or move our body. If we're left to grow and be without interruption, we don't stray far from our baby dreams. I never strayed far in my heart. Although my life took so many turns and I didn't graduate high school and I didn't finish college till well in my 30s, I always had in the back of my mind that writing was the way I would express myself this lifetime. Poetry, however, was an accident. I was at Cunningham Hunter College and desperately wanted to take a fiction class, but being a full-time worker, I had limited time slots and everything filled up so quickly. My second semester, Tina Chang's poetry class caught my eye. First class, she read The Blue Terrace by Terrence Hayes, and these lines gutted me. I love watching the sky regret nothing but itself, though only my lover knows it to be so, and only after watching me sit and stare off past heaven. Once I read that, I knew poetry would be it for me. The blank page could hold so much if you just took the risk and dared to surprise yourself. Thank you for being here tonight. The screen is yours.
Thank you so much. That was a beautiful introduction, and you dug in those crates, Dustin. So I appreciate you. Thank you for having me in this reading. Thank you for the fellow readers, Donna, Nathan, and Theresa. It's an honor to be here with all of you and to be able to read and listen to your work as well. This is the new book, Muse Found in a Colonized Body, with 4-way books. And I'm just going to jump into it. The first poem I'm going to read, I wrote it during the pandemic. It was probably in April of 2020. So bear with me. A brief meditation on breath. I have diver's lungs from holding my breath for so long. I promise you, I'm not trying to break a record. Sometimes I just forget to exhale. My shoulders held tightly near my neck. I'm a ball of tense living, a tumbleweed with steel-toed boots. I can't remember the last time I felt light as dandelion. I can't remember the last time I took the sweetness in and my diaphragm expanded into song. They tell me breathing is everything, meaning if I breathe right, I can live to be ancient. I'll grow a soft furry tail or be telekinetic, something powerful enough to heal the world. I swear, I thought the last time I think of death with breath was that balmy day in July when the cops became a raging fire and sucked the breath out of Garner. But yesterday I walked 38 blocks to my father's house with a mask over my nose and mouth, the sweat dripping off my chin only to get caught in fabric and pull up like rain. And I inhaled small spurts of me, little particles of my DNA I took into body my own self and thought I'd die from so much exposure to my own bereavement. They're saying this virus takes your breath away, not like a mother's love or like a good kiss from your lover's soft mouth, but like the police. It can kill you fast or slow, dealer's choice, a pallbearer carrying your body without a casket. They say it's so contagious, it could be quite breathtaking, so persistent, it might as well be breathing down your neck. The next poem I'm going to read is the title poem, and Muse Found in a Colonized Body. And part of what I was thinking about in this new collection is what does it mean to be a person that comes from colonized people, from enslaved people, but also from conquistadors, right? Like I have all these mix inside of me, and what does that mean, and how do I hold that history in my body, and how does that affect my way forward? So this is Muse Found in a Colonized Body. It's in 11 sections, but I'm only going to read the first section. And there is an epigraph from Helene Sejou, which is, there is no greater love than the love a wolf feels for the lamb it doesn't eat. They say when the Spaniards came, we thought them gods. They came with sincere eyes, but insincere mouths and cocks. They knew something about the universe, and we only knew about the earth, not about the stars, unless being guided by them is a kind of knowing. But no, in those days, the stars knew us more than we them. And that might be the difference between the wolf and the lamb, our relationship to bounty. I think what I want to say here is that to the wolf go the spoils, and yet there's something about being a lamb, the danger, the never knowing when the wolf will be hungry enough. How do you not love yourself when you constantly survive your undoing just by being precious? I don't like coyness. If I love you, I will take your mouth first because that is where the breath lives. Does that make me a wolf? Or does this? When I'm near you, I shackle my intentions and feast with my eyes. I won't dare eat of your flesh. How could I? It would be like the snake that eats itself from the tail. Eventually, it chokes on everything, its rough scales, its heart all colonized and tender. The whole world becomes its body, half eaten and dragging in the dirt. So I read this article about the color red, and why barns are red is probably because there's so much iron in the world, and iron is where the pigment, the oxidizing of iron is where the red pigment comes from. So I wrote this poem. All barns are red because of dying stars. The irony of stars, lonely and on their deathbeds, being responsible for the color of barns, and how this should be its own kind of table full of elements that we've never been able to fully realize, peace or brotherhood. And I'm sitting here trying to remember if I've ever seen a barn any color but the color of dying things, or if I would ever want to bask in the slow temperament of a blue barn with its cool, lulling song, or a kind of green that reminds me of a spruce or freshly cut grass. In the dead of night, I imagine a star whirling its way to earth, weeping as its lights go out, landing in a field somewhere in upstate New York or nowhere, Idaho, and becoming a barn, living out its afterlife bloodied and hollow. What a simple way for such a God to retire. If only all of us could die out this way, protecting cows, horses. And this is Feel Gray Must Exit. Nowhere to go, but you have to go somewhere. If I had a garage, I'd have a sale. Everything must go, even the garage. My obsession with teeth would prompt me to keep my toothbrush, and my ovaries, how they cry lately. Maybe I'll leave my birth control pills behind, make love to a wanderlust with a wild beard and a sweater like Moth Father. Our baby will look and sound like Iggy Pop, born with eyeliner on. And I'll never come back, not even for funerals, not even if they bought me a ticket. And this is Complicated Muse. And another part of this collection is sort of trying to figure out, as a woman, creating my own muses and not being a muse, but being my own muse to myself, but also finding new muses to pull inspiration from. So I love BuzzFeed quizzes, so this is sort of about that. Last night, I could have sworn I time traveled, not forward or back, but askew and slanted. It's my new superpower, how I move through the world, never in a straight line. I want to know everything about myself, so I spend hours asking the hard questions. What city do you really belong in? What goddess are you? What mythical creature do you most resemble? How many days would you survive in a zombie apocalypse? How do you love? Imaginings are wasteful, how we invest in them, and eventually we will break a mirror or spill salt, and all the reverie will be for naught. I want a muse with fishnet abs that can double as a dream catcher or a mesh for capturing extinct things, unicorns, hands on my body, salvation. If I take another BuzzFeed quiz that says my spirit poet is Sylvia Plath, I'll go back in time and befriend her, stroke her hair, and kiss her mouth deeply in hopes that the oven is never turned on. And this poem is from my dear friend and an incredible poet, Roberto Carlos Garcia. And this is imagining him running at the sight of deer. I was not there, but she tells me the story over and over, how after spotting a mob of deer, he ran like someone who is afraid to become the other becoming. The sound an animal makes, all guttural, bottomless, and rooted. He who feeds me joy and sorrow equally with golden tongue and eyes so bright. I imagine stars once living in the hollow sockets of his caramel face. And let's be clear, he ran from deer because he knows that beautiful doesn't always equal tame, and that gentle things are the ones that risk it all, which is to say, if deer could talk, they will tell you something about wanting to kill a thing and about being killed. We oblige, we kill them for sport and with great carelessness, and we do each other the same. So he ran from deer because maybe he understands that one day the targeted animal will fight back. It will straighten out his long neck like a heron, and his eyes will become wild, and this is what being hunted does to a man. I mean deer. I mean any animal on this earth. We live and we die. What happens in between is not up to fate, but something more complex. Say mystery. Say the lover's soft back in moonlight. Say fear. Say the smell of a honeysuckle in a barren field. Say hunger. And I say, run. Run. It's the only thing our body does well enough, good enough to stay alive. Two more. Everything is crumbling. I'm a crazy fanatic of like astrology. So here goes. So I looked up my birth chart. I needed a reminder for why I always want to run away from stability. Being a Leo in sign and rising can't compete with my Gemini moon. How it becomes bored at the slightest sense of habitual dress up, how it fears being a fraud in my Venus, how it resides in Cancer and its 7th house of perpetual falling, how I might die falling off cliffs downstairs in love, how if I look at someone and wish, be mine, what I mean is, tell me I'm worthy. How all I really want is to be a Pisces moon, like my mother, whose madness is a cursive M pinned to the soles of her feet, how she steps off chairs and buildings and trees and never falls, how she floats, a star dangling, a spore, an albatross strewing against a periwinkle blue. And I'm going to end with this poem that has more than a cameo by Idris Elba. I hope all of you know who that is. If you don't, look it up. And this is Notes on Self-Care for Hikmet and Girmay. And that's Nazim Hikmet, who wrote On Living, and Aracelis Girmay, who wrote On Kindness, those are two of my favorite poems. What better way to forget that the world is burning than by imagining me in London town with Idris and his Luther wool coat with its deep pockets where both my hands fit, as he walks me to his flat, and the decor is ridiculous, French chic with some touches of Kentucky country, but it's my fantasy, and there's no room for black leather couches or 70-inch TVs, no bachelor Shangri-La here, no beer in the fridge, only rows and rows of vintage Bordeaux. I chase Idris across my forehead, whirling into bed with him like a wrecking ball, envisioning his scruff face against my neck, his beard better than any exfoliator I've ever owned, his languid fingers like rakes against my plump body. And he loves me, all of him, his 40 trillion cells at attention to every stanza I write. And what better way to live than to desire this way? And this is not escapism, it's survival. One day this earth will rot, or worse, be made good, and there'll be no need for this sort of daydreaming. One day this earth will be good, or will be good, and Idris will be a faint taste of something I once wanted, like trees shedding against a November sky. I'll sit down to write a poem about the time I fantasized I made love to Idris Elba, not remembering how in my sorrow, he held me like one of my metaphors between his fingers, as though my poems were just delusions, foliage falling to the earth, routine and dying, thin as rice paper, tender as paper cranes. Thanks everyone for having me.
Thank you so much for that. I too have had similar thoughts about Idris, if I'm being honest. Thank you so much for that. And I'm going to drop the link one more time. Muse found in a colonized body. Save that link. If you're able, make a purchase today or save it for when you can. Our final reader of the evening is Nathan McClain, who I got to meet in Miami at the Miami Book Fair. I love when I get to meet poets in real life that are in the series, so that was quite nice. And when I was reading interviews, Nathan, I'm taking you back to 2019, reading this, and I was like, oh, this is like the perfect setup for you to read tonight. Like, it will all make sense once I read it. So this really stuck out to me. You were asked a couple of questions in one question, and I'm focusing just on one part where there was a statement and a question that said, right now, we're in a particularly anxious moment of American history with our nation's ugly legacy of racism and bigotry exacerbated by the Trump administration. What happens to the creative imagination in times like these? Mm-hmm. And I'm going to share how you responded to that. You're absolutely right about the times in which we find ourselves. It's terrifying outside. I'll say that. And our minds want to try to make sense of our world. I can't speak for everyone's imagination, but mine has certainly seized upon our current state of affairs. And I wouldn't consider myself someone who writes overtly political poems. In fact, I actively resisted writing overtly political poems, largely because I felt, as a Black poet, it was somehow expected of me. And I don't like simply conforming to some outside expectation. The Trump administration, coupled with my recent stint on jury duty, couldn't help but preoccupy my mind. And I've written, for the first time in my life, poems I might definitely categorize as political, at least more overtly so. Thank you for being here tonight. The screen is yours.
Thank you so much, Dustin, and for having me as part of the end of the year Wild and Precious reading series. It's been wonderful to listen to my fellow readers, Donna, Theresa, and Yesenia. Just thank you so much for the opportunity to read with all of you, and certainly to all of you who are in the Zoom space this evening. I was saying when we first got on the call that I recently, or just sort of taught my last class of the semester this afternoon. So I'm sort of already starting to think ahead to the break and ahead to a time maybe when the what's suggested by the poem I'll read first is a reality. So this is Labor Day, Brighton Beach. How lovely at last to have nothing to do but sit, shirtless, in my collapsible chair, reading Gerald Stern's American Sonnets, and lovely to sit, beer in my lap, just a little tipsy, lovely too to ignore beauty or desire or whatever, The young woman unfolding her nylon tent, smacking each stake into the sand with her sandal's heel, slipping discreetly into her swimsuit, though I could watch the plane zip past, tugging a banner for Wicked, which there was still time to see if you wanted, or the sailboat glide slowly by. And it was a good day for sailing, a good day. So I didn't have to think about sorrow or loss, though, let's face it, I did. How not to? The old man missing a left leg. Not how it happened or when, but if it gets easier, you know, living with it. Crutch snug under each armpit, and Jill had been gone a long time to warm her goat curry. Then farther out, a jet ski, like a straight razor, slits the water's surface, Carmen already asleep under a sun hat. Midlife Obad. There's a certain comfort in knowing a bridge has stood almost forever. There, long before the dawn's first foghorn blast, like one beast lowing to another. And before each ship, I could describe now with painstaking precision that will glide slowly underneath. Steel, suspension wire, something in my life should compare to these. Once there was a bridge under whose name I never learned, under which a small stream shimmered, the way a pond sometimes shimmers for a moment when a child flips a coin into it. Tiny fish swam there, but the water was like smoke. I thought nothing should have to live like this. The next poem that I'll read is entitled "The Ferry," and that is ferry as in the boat. I still had a lover. Maybe let's start there. I hitched a ride to Boston, where I missed the ferry by what seemed like minutes, but time can work that way in the mind. I was in love, or wanted to be in love, and there was distance everywhere, is maybe a better way to put it. Though, what exactly was it? I hadn't given it a designation. I looked for the boat. It wasn't there. Only the dock, a few seagulls, a blue distance. If I was supposed to wave goodbye, I missed my chance, though what did I care? So in love with solitude. At least I was at the time. It seemed easy, being lonely, watching time lapse, that boat long dispatched. I'd missed it, yet there I was, waving like a fool in love, perhaps. At what? I couldn't tell. I wasn't there when the ferry left, remember? I missed it. Or they went on without me. The distance made it hard to see clearly where distance ended, or if it did. Or I didn't make it in time to see. Maybe time was against me. I missed the ferry. I had no money. The ferryman said it was fine and smiled at me. Smiled. There was the shore and me wanting to be in love, though I wasn't. I carried what I could. Love? I didn't have room for it. In the distance, I swore my solitude waved. I missed it where I was headed, sure, but there was hardly time for that. The boat was early. I boarded it and stood on the stern. Part of me was missing, but there had to be a cost. That part I missed. My mind, a rough sea, I might have loved watching lap were I not so inside it. My mind, the fish too, the shore distant as the voice I thought I heard in it, as time itself. The ferry was late. I was there, hoping I missed it. I didn't trust the distance, lovely as it seemed. I didn't trust time, nor where it carried me. I knew what was there. And because Dustin, who is so, we were marking, so skilled at advertising for these wonderful events, posted or linked to this poem, I tried to build the reading sort of around it. This is Obad ending with a pacemaker. It's so easy from the hotel's 12th floor to see the sheet of ice splinter, then drift like continents on the river. From this height, the snow flurries, doesn't seem to fall at all. Maybe it's the trucks delivering meat, packed in salt, I imagine, gliding slowly along, that make me think back on the La Brea bakery truck driver, whose heart quit at the intersection of Melrose and Western. Paramedics listened to his chest, blew and blew into his mouth before he was wound to a stretcher, rushed away. The truck, all its freshly baked baguettes, left, and I was almost certain, stolen. Who knows if anything can really be saved? Not you or me. Not the heart, unreliable little engine it is. It shouldn't be a surprise when I say the La Brea bakery truck driver that I'm thinking of you. Just a couple more. One I'm actually reading that's not in scales, is a somewhat slightly newer poem, which is entitled, I think I'm writing a lot about, and I think previously owned, spent a lot of time in sort of in the Northeast, and I think I'm still kind of navigating a lot of that pastoral space, so much of which I was hearing in the work of my peers, and certainly the so many pastoral markers in Yesenia's work. This is entitled, I Could Hardly Tell. I could hardly tell one tree from another until up close I touched the trunk, thick, gnarled as one might expect, with 2 fingers, the way one might search for a pulse, where the bark had been badly scarred, not by a woodpecker, but by young lovers, the boy flashing his pocket knife, persuaded, even as I have been, of the tree's rhetoric, or perhaps the permanence of affection, so in some way one could feel nearly kin to it. And it was Yesenia's reading her poem that sort of enlarged upon the figure of this wolf that made me have to sort of shift where I was going to close this reading. So I'm going to close this reading with a poem entitled "The World is Full," and once again, incredibly grateful to be in this space with all of you, and thank you for your attention. The world is full. I saw the wolf outside the window, in the backyard, near the park bench, nearly stripped of all its paint. Or I thought it was a wolf I saw, insomuch as I even called, "Wolf, wolf," through every room of the farmhouse. It was quite the spectacle. False alarm, one might say, as if explanation were a kind of comfort. I was not comforted. My panic startled me, the way one can be startled by something he's read in a book he's forgotten he owns, that he can't in the slightest remember buying, while thumbing over the other spines, all those titles huddled together there on the shelves. Out of nowhere, we say, in these cases. Where did this come from? How had I missed this? The wolf seemed to come out of nowhere, or maybe from a book I remember read to me as a child, some cautionary tale, a window capable of being looked in, seen through, if you were brave. It was not a wolf outside the window. It was a coyote, but with a wolf's bulk, its metallic flash of fur, its appetite. I admit, I was afraid. Not for myself, but for the chickens. I looked out the window because the chickens clucked so madly, like children at a school running amok. The hens flapped at the glass. The chicks instinctively slipped out of sight into the taller, wet grass. No, it was not a wolf. Of course, I knew the difference. I had been a boy, been small enough to be clenched in a wolf's jaw, though I never was. I was safe. I wanted to save them, but the commercial in the background insisted the window for savings was closing fast, then faded to black as they do when they're done. The wolf scattered them the way feathers can be scattered, torn from the body, or the way children are drilled even in grade school to scatter. Shh. We prepared for this now. I called wolf. I clapped at the glass, which I've been told makes a difference, and I wanted things to be different. To the chickens, it must have looked as if I took delight in their predicament. And who would tell them otherwise? The world is full of suffering, it's true. Why not delight in that it's yours, not mine, for once? The coyote slunk away, or the wolf did. Something dead, I thought, between its teeth. I was afraid, though I went to look for what was missing, what was lost to the woods. 10 chickens, 2 chicks. I counted them, like I tally all loss, scattered the way one might scatter bird seed in the yard, or how one might scatter a child's ashes to the ocean's indifference. I'd been a boy, lost among the woods as in some fable. Or maybe not lost, just the shade of tree bark. Not a wolf, though to the chickens, the distinction hardly matters. Here, chickie, chickie. No one had bothered to name them. To name them, we believed, would make them harder to kill and eat, but how wrong we were. I believed I could save them, or that saving them meant I loved them, that my love was good for something. Thank you all very much.
Thank you so much for that. Putting in the chat the link for Previously Owned, Nathan's latest book, and also redropping that link tree in because this reading was recorded, so it's going to be on YouTube tonight for everyone to share. Best way to support this series, don't ask for financial donations. It's just to share information about the series. So retweet, reshare things on Instagram, share that link tree. That is what I ask of anyone. If you truly enjoy the Wild and Precious Life series, then share a link from time to time. It's greatly appreciated. You just can't beat that recommendations for somebody telling other people to tune in. Want to thank everybody for being here tonight. It's our last reading of the calendar year. Very excited as we creep up on our next anniversary, which will be April. Can't believe that we started this back in April 2020. Appreciate all the support because the series only works if readers say yes when they're asked to read. So thank you for saying yes, and thank you for people for showing up. It's very much appreciated. And I wish everyone a happy holiday season and to be safe out there. Have a fantastic night, everybody.